Ha ha ha, he he he, you are here and so are we. Ha ha ha, he he he, you are here and so are we.
Hello everybody and welcome to today's episode of the Early Years Development Show with me, Lucy from Rhythm Time. In today's episode, I speak with Katie. Katie is mum to Effie and an early years educator. She also founded the Instagram page Play Adventures. Katie is really passionate about getting outside with children. She said that it's great for their development, for their mental health, and so many other things. We discuss lots of tips for getting outside, lots of things children can do outside, why being outside is great for children, and nature-inspired learning, amongst so many other things. It's a really great episode, so please do tune in. I hope you enjoy. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you, and thanks for having me. It's such an honor, really is.
Let's go into it. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, your background in play adventures and nature-inspired learning?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Katie. I'm mum to Effie, who is 2. She was 2 in October. And my background is that I'm an early years educator. So I previously worked in nurseries. I predominantly worked with babies. So I ran a lot of baby rooms in nurseries. And kind of did that as soon as I left school, found my passion for early years through that. And my husband was in the military, so it brought us to Suffolk. We're originally from Leicestershire, so it brought us to Suffolk eventually. And actually, I couldn't find a job in nurseries here, so I kind of fell into nannying. And I was with a lovely little boy who was 13 months old at the time, meant to have just been a year. 10 years later, 3 more children later, I was still with the family, and actually they were a really outdoorsy family, and we just kind of gelled, and it just worked really well for us. And we were outside all the time, and it kind of carried on my passion for being outside with children. And so then I found a part-time job as a family support practitioner, which is what I do now. So I don't nanny anymore, but I am a family support practitioner in a children's centre in Ipswich. So I work with quite vulnerable families in the centre of what's essentially quite a densely populated town. So there isn't a lot of green spaces. I mean, we are quite lucky in Ipswich. There are quite a few parks and play areas like that. But I run an outdoor session for parents and their children. So that's from birth to 5. That has a focus on kind of the benefits of well-being and things like that and being outdoors, but also just using nature to play with. So it's dead simple. There's no kind of, fancy stuff that we use. It's really simple. So that's my kind of day job. And then obviously I have the Play Adventures Instagram page, which I set up in 2017. I was coerced by a friend who said, you must set up a page and share what you're doing at work, because it's amazing and parents will find it really inspiring. So I kind of said, all right, I'll do it. No one's going to pay any attention to it. So I set it up, had a few followers, and was kind of happy with that, just sharing what I was doing. And then I was quite lucky that a couple of influencers spotted my page and did share, which obviously helps your reach and stuff like that. But then lockdown obviously came and the page just took off. Like I never expected to take it off the way it did, and kind of just snowballed from there. And I think people were just in a state of needing activities and ideas and inspiration when they were stuck at home or in their gardens, or going on that hour's walk that we were allowed, and entertaining their children and educating their children at home in a really simple way. So that's kind of where it grew from. And now I use it as a platform just to kind of share inspiration for play, but also like a visual diary for what Effie and I get up to now. So obviously I was using it for kind of stuff I was sharing at work before, but now it's very much what we get up to at home, and hopefully inspires others to join in and have a go as well and get outside whatever the weather.
That's brilliant. And I must say, I have been on your Instagram page and it is very good. And there's so much variety on there, so much like different things. It's not sometimes on Instagram you go on and people are selling things and things like that. But as you say, yours is more kind of just what you're up to day to day, things that mums can try at home with their little ones and things like that. And it's so good that you've had such a positive response.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And I think if I can inspire one person with that page, my work there is done. But actually, it's just so nice to look back and see the things that, and how my kind of teaching and educating has changed throughout the years as well, and kind of my thoughts on things. But yeah, it's just a really lovely thing to share, and I really enjoy doing it.
Brilliant. And so this is brilliant actually, because this podcast is all about those early years in a child's life and how important the years are, especially from 0 to 5. So take Rhythm Time, for example. We're not just a music class, we're getting people to, use the power of music to help children's development, to help them speak, to help their confidence, to help a whole host of things. Is this kind of the feeling that you have, that those first years are so important?
Absolutely. And I think there's been loads of studies, hasn't there, that suggest that actually the first 1,000 days of your child's life are the most crucial and important days of their lives, building those foundations for everything that comes, whether that's preschool, school, however they're educated, and beyond as an adult as well. And actually, for me as a parent, that resonates really hard, because I'm like, it's a huge responsibility, but also as an educator, the impact that has on those children that are with you. And actually, from being in nurseries, those children were with us kind of 7 till 6 most days. We often saw them more than the parents did, so we shaped so much of their lives. And understanding those first few years and the importance of development, and the impact that we can have on a child's life is mad. It's amazing.
It's brilliant. It's a lovely thought as well, isn't it, that you've got so much, you can spend so much time with the little one in the early years and have so much fun, but have such an impact on their life.
That's
So
it.
outdoor play, how does that help a child's development, and being outside? How have you found that that's helped children?
I don't think there's an area of development that it doesn't support. And I think there's a lot of kind of controversy that actually nature play is just about, getting muddy and that's it. And that's kind of where it stops. Whereas I look at it much more deeply than that. Is actually all areas of learning and development can be supported outside in a really simple way. And you don't kind of have to look at it too deeply to see that either. You can have a bowl of conkers and there you go, got a maths activity. You can climb trees and you've got your physical activity all done. You can paint. We love nothing more than getting a big bowl of mud, bit of paint, and a bit of water, and a paintbrush, and there you go, we've got some art. And that's one of our favorite things to do, is just get creative with nature as well, and following the seasons. You look outside and there's so many things that are on offer, and I think sometimes if you're not used to going outside, that can feel quite overwhelming, like looking outside, especially in the winter. You look outside the window now, it's just bare trees, it's freezing cold, it's windy. I get it why people don't want to go outside, but if you take the time just to kind of delve a bit deeper, there's so many things that you can learn from, and just understanding the world as well. You learn so much together with your child, going out and finding out what birds. We've got phones at our fingertips, haven't we? So you can quickly find out what is that bird, and there's so many opportunities for learning.
And I guess there's also something to be said, as you said before, changing the environment and being outside in fresh air and that type of thing can be great for child's mental health as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that you can get a huge dose of natural vitamin D just by stepping outside your front door. And I understand that people don't have access to kind of gardens or even green spaces living in kind of inner cities and things, but even stepping onto a balcony and just breathing in some fresh air is so good, and can be beneficial for everybody.
Yeah, that's really true. And also, I think when you have that change of scenery, like for example, at nursery, my little girl, they always go outside. And sometimes my husband says, surely they won't go outside today, it's freezing. But every time I go to collect her, they said she's had some outside time and she's had that time outside. So I think building that into a routine, as you say, to begin with, it could be a bit overwhelming. But if they're used to it, it's something that's beneficial.
Yeah, and children very quickly do. They adapt to the kind of weathers, and they don't seem to feel it as much as we do as adults. And I think the more time you spend outside, the kind of harder you get as well to it. It's really amazing how quickly. And I think the most important thing for you to be able to get outside is being prepared. I think, if you've got the right kit, and it doesn't have to be expensive stuff, secondhand shops and those online kind of secondhand sellers and stuff, you can get anything for a child like less than half the price, can't you? Because
Yeah.
they grow out of everything.
I know.
So I think layers are your absolute kind of best friend in winter, layering up and just doing it in small kind of manageable chunks as well.
Absolutely. So have you got any kind of activities that you like to do to kind of achieve specific goals or objectives, if you know what I mean? So for example, speech and language or motor skills or
Yeah, so in terms of kind of speech and language, when you're outside, just being outside, you know, even if you're just on a walk to preschool or nursery or school, or just taking, you know, the dog for a walk, whatever, being outside opens up a world of new vocabulary. You know, inside you don't have trees, you don't have moss on the floor or anything like that. So there's things to spot, and it's as simple as pointing out those things to your child or just letting them notice them and kind of question and be curious, and kind of giving them the language is going to widen their vocabulary tenfold just by stepping outside and just kind of immersing yourself in nature as much as possible. What I love to do in my group, and actually funnily enough, it's coincided with today perfectly. Yesterday in my nature group that I run was our music week. So it's all about music and nature and trying to keep it as simple as possible. You know, you don't need to spend loads of money on instruments to enjoy music when it's all out there ready for you. So one of my favorite things to do is to make a log pile drum kit. So you literally will go find some logs if you've got tree stumps anywhere or some branches that have fallen in a park, find a twig, find a stick, off you go, you've got a drum kit. And the children yesterday were just loving it and having the best time. And we quite often do that at home, or we'll tie some string between trees and put saucepans or kind of the stuff from our mud kitchen. We'll hang all of that up and make loads of music, and I'm sure our neighbours absolutely love us for that. That's always really good fun, and it's all about rhythm, and that's kind of fundamental to language development, isn't it? Is the understanding rhythm and beat and tempo is going to really help with that early language development, you know, right from tiny toddlers. So yeah.
Absolutely, that's brilliant. I just like the idea of kind of being outside and finding things to make music and
Do it. And being outside gives you that freedom, doesn't it? You can be louder, you can be bigger with your movements, and kind of they have that kind of freedom to explore. And often it can be messier because you're not too precious about things being kind of messy and like being inside or kind of damaging anything like that. So it does give children that freedom to really express themselves in a really big, bold way. And there's, you know, as simple as a pine cone can be an instrument. And we make little kind of like scraper instruments in our have pine cones of all different sizes, and we just scrape them with twigs or kind of like wooden sticks and hear all different noises. And it's just lovely to hear and just watch their fascination as they realise, oh, it makes a noise.
yeah, and it's I bet kind of like the sense of achievement as well, that they're making kind of a noise together and they're all playing their instruments. I bet it's a lovely atmosphere, and again confidence building and different things like that. Also, I guess you mentioned your group, so do you have a number of children in the groups at one time, or how does that work?
It completely varies. So the groups that we run within the centre are free, and they are aimed at children between birth and 5 years. And again, each week varies depending on how many, but our group has been really lucky. I was really worried actually setting up a nature group, and I started in January, about 5 or 6
Very
weeks ago.
brave.
Exactly. And I thought, oh, what have I done? This is going to be a disaster. But the amount of parents that just turned up with this real enthusiasm, like, oh, we can't wait. And, you know, if your child sees that, they have that too. So, you know, they just come in, get stuck in. So I, on average, have between kind of 6 and 15, depending.
wow.
Some days in the holidays, I can have up to 40 children because siblings will come along, and
Yeah.
you can imagine it's beautiful chaos. It's lovely, but yeah, and we just have a great fun exploring, and we're really lucky we kind of do it in a little enclosed meadow
Okay.
that's part of the nursery school we're attached to, so it's completely safe. So those parents that are worried about taking children out and about, it's a safe space for them. So especially children with special educational needs, for example, who might not have that awareness of danger, parents feel able to relax and let them explore freely because they're completely safe. So it's
That's
been a
yeah,
real positive thing.
that's a really nice thought, actually, that it's inclusive of all children. And as you say, children with special educational needs, they can also experience it. And as you say, the parents don't have to worry. And I guess it's beneficial for them in many ways as well. Have you found that?
Oh, 100%. And that's why we have a focus on well-being in my group, because actually I think we often talk about children's well-being and their self-esteem and confidence, but actually if the parent or the grown-up who has that child for the majority of the time is feeling low or lacking in confidence, actually that is going to affect the way that they bring up that child. So it's really important to us as a centre, and me personally, to kind of support everybody as a family. So we do our mindful moment at the end of each session, and that is usually something really simple, something like star breathing. So you literally kind of breathe in and out, or we might listen to what sounds we can hear, or we might kind of do an exercise where we run really quickly and then we feel our hearts beating. And actually it's the parents who get the most from that, because you can see them just taking that time and that moment, because having a toddler is tough. You and I know
Absolutely.
sometimes you feel so frazzled you can't think straight, and actually, like you say, nature doesn't, and being outside, it doesn't discriminate against who you are, how you feel, and kind of what your background is. It kind of can help everybody.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's amazing that, as you mentioned there, the parents also have this time to perhaps bond with other parents and feel less alone. And that's something we've found in Rhythm Time as well. It's not just for the children. I mean, primarily for their development and things like that, but also for the parents to bond with the children, parents to meet
Yeah.
other parents. To have that conversation, to have that almost, make friendships and things like that. So I guess it's very similar in your groups.
Absolutely, and it can be a lonely time being a parent. Sometimes I've described it to families that I've worked with, is actually you can be surrounded by people but still feel lonely. And sometimes there's only so much conversation you can have, especially with tiny babies. Sometimes you think, oh, we've been playing for ages. You look at your watch and it's been 5 minutes and you're like, oh, okay. So sometimes just knowing that, okay, on a Tuesday at 10:30, I've got an hour where I'm going to see some other humans. It can be really powerful and really kind of, I think, special to a lot of parents that come to any group. It can be really, really amazing.
Absolutely. And blocking that time out, like you say, have that routine. So you do it every week. So you get out the house and you know what's coming. Because as you say, it can be very lonely.
Yeah, 100%.
Okie doke. So do you have any ideas that parents can perhaps try at home with their children? So these nature inspired activities?
Yeah, so I've mentioned before about the mud painting. That's
Yeah.
super simple to set up at home. You need very little, just a bowl, a bit of water, and find some mud. And you can create your own kind of poster paint effectively. I really love to have paper vertically, just because vertical play offers so many benefits for kind of brain development for young children. So playing vertically or mark making vertically makes both sides of the brain work at the same time. It's called crossing the midline. So basically the long and short of it is that it means as an adult we know that both sides of our body can do different things but also work in sync together, and it's something that children have to learn and develop. They're not born with it. So having things vertically, whether that's pinned to kind of, I've got a big hedge in my garden and I pin everything to it and we kind of paint on there, and that's lovely. And children who often kind of will come and do some mark making, then wander off and get bored with it just kind of flat on a surface, might be more interested, engaged with it being big and kind of vertical rather than just an A4 piece of paper on
That is something I did
a
not know. That's very interesting. And I suppose I've noticed at nursery there's a lot of kind of those propped up boards and things like that. Easels, that's the word, yeah. So I guess that's probably why, and that's a really good. So there's a top tip for parents at home.
Absolutely. And without those and that kind of both sides of the brains working, simple things like turning the page of a book to be able to read when they go to school, or being able to write from one side of the paper to another, becomes so much easier if that part of development has already happened. It's much less for them to kind of process as they're learning those things. They can focus on those rather than the physical aspect of doing those things. So
That's it.
yeah, that's one activity I love to do. A bit of mud painting. Things like mud kitchens, everyone gets really worried about kind of buying the fanciest, prettiest looking mud kitchen. At the end of the day, it's some pots and pans, a little bit of mud, stones, whatever you can find that children are going to become really absorbed with playing. And I kind of say, get yourself a washing up bowl, get yourself to the charity shop. Anything metal is brilliant. It's going to last forever and can just stay outside, and it will withstand all of the British weather thing that can be
It needs to be hardy.
and especially with toddlers who don't necessarily understand that things break when you drop them. And there you go, you've got yourself a mud kitchen, and actually it might not necessarily look pretty to you, but to your child it'll be so inviting, and they will spend hours tipping and pouring and learning about capacity and measure and weight and balance and all sorts of lovely things just through playing with a bit of mud. And you couldn't get anything simpler. And you can add stuff to that, seasonally there'll be pine cones, conkers, leaves, stones. We love getting the little mini pumpkins in kind of October and having those. You can have endless fun. You'll be served up delicious plates of muddy goodness with a pumpkin on top. So that's a really exciting one. And I'm really passionate about getting babies outdoors as well. And it's something that a lot of parents, and I totally get it, they feel really worried about, especially in winter or like the height of summer. Babies out can feel quite overwhelming. And so Effie was born in October, so right at the beginning of kind of autumn, winter. And we got her outside as much as possible right from pretty much day one, and even started a forest school at 3 months with her.
Wow.
So we were out every week at forest school. It was specifically for babies, but it was every week we were there and enjoying it. And one of my favorite things to do with a newborn in particular is taking their play gym outside. So literally taking it outside on a mat or a picnic rug outside and tying natural treasures to it. So we used to put things like pine cones or big leaves or even feathers that you've found out and about. And they will sit for ages just watching, and the breeze makes it move on its own, and your baby will be fascinated by it. And you don't need to overcomplicate things to kind of get your baby outdoors and enjoy. You don't have to throw them in the mud immediately when they're tiny little babies. Even just going on a walk, even in winter, the trees, they're bare, they're moving around. It's that contrast of sky and tree is fascinating for really tiny babies. So I encourage it as much as possible.
And have you found it helps kind of with their development too, and things like perhaps their sleep and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know for sure that on the days we spent more time outside, Effie definitely slept better, even if that was just nap time. Quite often we'd have naps outside, whether that's in the pushchair, in the sling on me, or we have in our old house we used to have like a little hammock, and she used to just lay in there and have a little doze when she was really little. And it's really lovely for kind of a parent of a newborn and quite a young baby just to get outside and really ground themselves again, because having a newborn is chaotic. This tiny human comes in and turns your world upside down, and sometimes just taking that breath of fresh air with them outside can be really beneficial for them too. But sleep is definitely something, and just kind of that fresh air just in the lungs is going to really help kind of have the more deep and relaxed sleep. So yeah, 100%.
And I think again, it's what we were talking about earlier, the benefits probably for the parents just as much,
Yeah,
because those early days, it's kind of, they're a blur when I look back, and the last thing I thought about would be going outside, but maybe that is something that new mums we should kind of encourage new mums to do a lot more, because I think it's important.
Yeah, definitely, and just gives you that breathing space, doesn't it? You know, if baby's safe in the pram or in the sling and they're happy and content for a little while, you can just take a deep breath,
Yeah,
take it all in, and just take 5 without, having to think about the 100 things that need to be done at home and the routine you need to stick to, and you've got kind of apps telling you this and everything that you should and shouldn't be doing with your baby. It can be really overwhelming, and like you said, looking back, it's a complete blur, isn't it? And
absolutely.
uh,
And you almost wish that you could talk to yourself back then and say, actually, go outside and take a break, or go to a class, or do something for you.
yeah,
Don't worry so much. Don't get so caught up in it, which is so
yeah,
much easier said than done,
of
out the
course.
other end.
Course it is. And actually, it's funny you should say that, because I'm part of my role, I'm an infant massage instructor as well.
Okay.
So one of the questions that I ask those, usually mums, it is sometimes dads in the group as
Yeah.
well, but I always say to them, those babies are between kind of 3 and 6 months usually. And I have a question where I say to them, okay, what would you sitting here today say to yourself on the day that baby was born? Kind of, what would you tell yourself? What like pep talk would you give yourself if you could go back in time? And the conversations we have are just incredible. They're just telling each other, actually, you've got this. It's all right. It's going to be fine. And kind of, I think that kind of settling period from a newborn to kind of like 3 month old, where they just go, actually, it's all right.
Yeah.
You're going to be okay. And things are tough, but it'll be all right. And it's a really interesting question. And I think we should ask ourselves that more, shouldn't we? And kind of say, what would you say to yourself back then? When those
Absolutely. And
babies
then it's also great advice for kind of mums coming up now, because obviously that's things that they need to hear. So yeah, that's really interesting. So how about the different seasons and the weather? Can parents kind of adapt different activities to those?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we follow the seasons at home as much as possible, just because I find it makes thinking of something to do much easier. We kind of use it as an opportunity to teach Effie about changes in weather, the environment around us, but also the celebrations that come with those seasons. Even if it's inside, I think that often, if you're a little bit worried about going outside and doing activities or finding something to do, a good way to start can be bringing nature inside first. So, we spoke about the conkers and stones and things like that. As simple as using a recycled bottle and some conkers and pebbles or things like that to make a shaker bottle. You've brought nature inside, you're kind of immersing your child in those natural objects, but also you're in your safety and your comfort of your home. You don't have to go out and be, if you're not feeling brave enough to go out and do it outside, that can be something really simple to do. Or a really simple sensory tray, just throw it on a tray and let them explore. There's lots of different shapes and textures, and really small babies will enjoy doing that, right up to school age children will also enjoy the same activities. And that's why I think following the seasons is really amazing, because there's something new to discover in every season. Summer is amazing because you can get outside and you feel free to spend that time out there. But autumn, I think I might be brave and say, is my favorite season.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've changed my mind on a daily basis, but autumn's lovely, isn't it? You've got your leaves, you can throw leaves around, go and crunch in the leaves, puddle splashing. There's so many developmental benefits from splashing in a puddle. Risk taking turns, gross motor development. You're jumping, you're balancing, you're learning to manage with different layers on, and welly boots. That's a whole new thing, isn't it? Learning to walk in a pair of boots. And actually, I think going again, kind of back to that parent thing, is releasing your inner child for a little bit. I challenge anyone not to jump in a puddle with their toddler when they see the joy upon their face. I challenge you not to just get stuck in and enjoy it. It's lovely. And I think, weather can be really fascinating, exposing our children to different weathers. We have so many extreme weathers at the minute in England, don't we? But even babies love the feeling of kind of raindrops on their hands or the wind blowing on their face. And kind of, if we're ever lucky to get some snow, that's a whole activity in itself,
Yeah.
isn't it? But following the seasons and just kind of looking out and seeing what's inspiring you, right outside the window. There's lots to see and explore.
And I guess the change in seasons as well, kind of having that discussion with your toddler or your preschooler, the changes
Yeah,
that they can see happening and things like that. I bet that's great for their development.
absolutely. And again, that's widening that vocabulary even further, isn't it? Words that perhaps you wouldn't have exposed your child to. Suddenly you've got a whole new dictionary of words to kind of expose them to and teach them about, which is a lovely thing to do.
Absolutely. So have you got any tips for parents who might be a little bit hesitant about going outdoors? So some people aren't as outdoorsy and they might think, oh, it's raining, or they might get a cold or things like that.
Yeah. So first of all, I always try to remind parents that you can't get sick from being cold. So viruses are spread by viruses,
Yes.
not by being cold. So I sometimes have to even remind myself that. Sometimes I'm like, oh, she's a bit snotty. Perhaps we should stay in. But then I think actually it's not going to make it any worse. It is only going to make it better. Fresh air is amazing to kind of get that immune system going. The vitamin D is a natural immunity booster, so it's only going to make things better. But I totally get that parents are worried about them kind of getting potentially poorly, but you can prepare, I think, is the best tip I can say. If you've got all the right kit ready, whether that's for winter, summer, and all the in-betweens, but winter especially, if a child gets cold, your lovely session outdoors is going to come to a very abrupt end if someone's got cold hands. And quite often in my group, I will have to cut the session slightly shorter because I've noticed that children are becoming a little bit sad. They're kind of looking at mums and dads and going, oh, and doing really sad faces. And you look at their hands and they're bright red because they don't know that if they dive them into that bowl of icy water, it's going to be really cold. So having layers and layers and layers is much better than having a big puffy coat, because layers hold the heat in much better. If you can get some really good base layers, especially made of kind of like natural fibers like wool, are really good. But again, like I said before, charity shops are your best friend for this situation, or kind of online secondhand sellers. You will find a plethora of secondhand waterproofs and layers for your child. But most people have got enough t-shirts and kind of layers to build up. Even if it's, what I tend to do on a really cold day is a pair of tights, a pair of leggings, and then a thicker pair of trousers, numerous pairs of socks, and then the same on top, so kind of like vests, t-shirts, long sleeve tops, and then jumpers and things like that. And before you know it, they'll be lovely and toasty warm and quite happy to play. And do the same for yourselves, grown ups, because it's so easy to get them all bundled up and then just grab the nearest coat you can find and then sit there shivering. And if we're sat kind of hunched over and looking really kind of like miserable about being in the cold, children automatically start to kind of mimic our behaviors and think, well, actually, if they're feeling miserable, should I be feeling miserable? And it can make the whole situation a lot harder. So yeah, if you're wrapped up warm, and take spares of things like gloves, definitely have a couple of pairs of gloves, because
It's the hands and the feet for me.
Oh,
If they're cold, that's it.
I'm totally with you. I'm totally with you. And I've always got my thick warm socks on with my boots, so even I get really cold. But it's about being as prepared as possible. And I like to have a little go bag for going outside.
Yeah.
That we take with us, that's got all the spares in it. So everyone's got their kind of going out bag, but I do have a specific one for when we're just kind of outside and potentially getting messy, cold or wet, with spares and lots of snacks. Children who are cold burn a lot more calories, same as a grown-up. Snacks and drinks are really important, so take lots of kind of snacks with you when you're out and about. But also, if you are feeling worried about getting outside and kind of feel a bit overwhelmed by it, or aren't particularly outdoorsy yourself, take it really slow. You don't have to go out and spend the whole day in the woods and kind of live a nomadic life overnight. You can literally spend a few minutes outside, or just kind of go for a short walk down in your local area where you feel really comfortable and it, and kind of building that up really gradually. That's probably one of my top tips. But
Mhm.
making sure you've got a warm child, a warm grown up is probably the best start. And then the same in summer, all in reverse as well. So
Yeah.
making sure that you've got the drinks, you've got the snacks, you've got the sun cream. And if you're kind of in woodland areas or things like that, bug spray, because there's nothing worse than getting bitten, getting itchy. So if you've got the right stuff, you don't need a lot else if you're
Yeah.
kind of dressed appropriately. There's a good old saying that kind of gets bandied around, is there's no such thing as bad weather. It's just bad clothing. So
Mhm.
it's all about that preparation and kind of yeah, just taking it really slowly and building up your time outdoors, because like we said earlier, actually, if you don't spend a lot of time outdoors, you do feel the cold a lot more, and you can get tired and you get grumpy because you're hungry. So there's no point kind of rushing out and doing it all in one go, because nobody's going to enjoy their time. But yeah, and if you do find it really tough getting outside, like we said, bring it inside. Go out and grab a few little bits and bobs on a short walk and bring them back home to explore. Like making a little music shaker with your plastic bottle, or finding a pine cone to make music on. You can have lots of fun inside with nature.
I guess it's finding that balance as well. So how often, so for example, how often are you outside with Effie?
So we do go out every single day.
Yeah.
The length of time that we go out varies.
Yeah.
Monday and Tuesday I work, so she's with the childminder, who is also quite outdoorsy and has kind of a free flow setting, so they can go out and access the garden whenever they want, or they go off on trips to the forest or the beach and things, which we're quite lucky to have just around the corner.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really depends, and it depends on kind of our mood, what we're up to. But I aim for kind of an hour a day minimum. There's lots to be said about kind of getting outside, especially for children who struggle with sleep. There's lots to be said in terms of I'll get the word right, is it circadian rhythms? So kind of getting outside late afternoon time can be really good at helping your child's body clock regulate and prepare for sleep as well. It's kind of like an evolutionary thing that we have, that
Mm.
kind of it goes, okay, it's starting to get a bit dark, or the birds are going to bed now, and all of kind of the changes in the environment are really really important to our kind of body clocks registering what time of day it is, and supporting sleep. So yeah, some days we're out there for half an hour. Some days we're out there all day. But it really does vary.
So your advice for perhaps a mum that wanted to get out and doesn't, just do some walks to start with and slowly build it up.
Absolutely, especially if you've got a really small baby,
Yeah.
or a toddler who's just learnt to walk, perhaps. A couple of hours is a very long time in their schedules, isn't it? And fitting that in, or even just kind of using one nap time to go for a walk, just get that fresh air for yourself, can help build your confidence with getting out and about and feeling ready and prepared to get out. But yeah, just to even walk up the road a few meters and see what you can spot, because even in the most urban places you'll find nature trying to get through. In the central London, you'll see little dandelions poking up through.
Absolutely. And that brings me nicely on to my next question, was if people aren't kind of as lucky enough to have something like you've got on their doorstep, I know we've got parks and things like that. Have you got any places that you would recommend going to?
Usually most towns, even massive cities, will have some kind of green space, and I think that we're really lucky in this country that our kind of cities are very protective of those green spaces. So usually there'll be kind of, you might have a wildlife trust that have got a green space within a city, or even as simple as kind of small green areas around play parks are really nice, because they're often quite nicely kept, so they're safe to go and explore. But even within a play park, they're getting much better at leaving natural resources like bits of mud, or kind of like grassy areas for children to explore. So sometimes you just have to look a little bit harder, and you'll suddenly think, there's a green bit, I never noticed that. I'm really lucky that we live out in the countryside, and I always have, even as a toddler myself. I was brought up on a farm and in the countryside, so I've always had access to it. So it's really easy for me to say, like, go outside in nature, but I totally get that some people don't have it as kind of easily or accessible. So um even if you just have a balcony or something like that, you can get all of those lovely benefits just by stepping out onto the balcony. You're still getting fresh air and a change of environment and scenery, and it's still outdoors.
Absolutely. And I think, like you say, obviously the play parks, but also just looking for a green space or some water or something like that. It's all nature, isn't it? It's just looking that little bit harder.
Yeah, and kind of going outside the box a little bit with it, and just thinking, actually, to us as an adult, we look at a puddle or a stream or something like that, and it's just a puddle or a stream. But to a child, there's so many opportunities, and actually, you can find a puddle in the most concrete of jungles, but you can also find them in the biggest of fields, and a puddle's a puddle. It's just as fun no matter where you find your puddle.
That's a lovely thought as well, isn't it? Because to adults, sometimes a puddle is an inconvenience, whereas to a child, it's just heaven.
For myself, I found myself the other day, Effie just ran headlong to a puddle, and I went, no, and then I was like, it can dry.
Yeah, it's a lovely little, I don't know if you've seen it, I think it's by Murphy's Sketches. Have you seen the little picture? And it's like, they're only young once, let them jump in the puddles and all that. It tugs on the heartstrings. Yeah.
I just think, like I said earlier, I challenge yourself not to want to jump in that puddle with them. And sometimes it might not be appropriate, or it might not be, something you want to do, but just releasing your inner child just for a few seconds can be so kind of therapeutic, and just forgetting what time it is, forgetting the routine, forgetting the schedule, and just having nowhere to go, nowhere to be, and jump in a puddle.
Yeah, and
It's
forgetting the phone as well, put the phone away and have that time with your child and kind of look into their eyes, and they enjoy that, don't they? They love it when mummy's playing with them, or daddy, or whoever it is.
Want to give so much to us, and something that's always stuck with me is, if your child gives you anything, whether it's a stick, a twig, an apple they found on the floor, like under a tree or whatever, take it, because that's all they've got to give you as a child, and that's the biggest gift they can give you, is welcome you into their curiosity and what they find fascinating. And even if to you you're like, oh, another twig,
Add it to the pile.
add it into the pocket, because they've spent time finding that for you. And I think, we've got endless amounts of nature's treasures dotted around the house that we've picked up, and one of my friends actually started a jar where anything her little person gives to her, she puts it in the jar. And I just thought, oh, how lovely is that? Over the years, they're going to have this jar just full of lovely bits and bobs, some of it weird and wonderful, but that a child has given to them, and they can look back on that. And I just think that's a really nice thought.
Such a lovely thought, it really is. Oh, we spoke a little bit about music earlier. Have you got any more kind of tips about music and nature and how it kind of links together?
And yeah, like, I think we really overcomplicate things sometimes, don't we? And we have got so many distractions in our lives, both as parents and children as well. So music is really important to us as a family. We have music on all the time, whether that's the radio, that's our Tony box with something jingling away.
We love the Tony box.
We've always got that on the go. But actually, nature has its very own soundtrack. And if you ditch the phones, you ditch the screens, you ditch all of those distractions and listen carefully enough, there's music all around us in nature, whether that's the leaves rustling, the birds singing, kind of like branches tinkling together. There's an amazing soundtrack going on outside that you can find, and if you listen hard enough, it's there. And there are so many kind of rhythms in nature as well. And even if you're not out in the countryside where you might hear kind of external noises, they're still musical as well. Cars going by, it's a rhythm, it's a beat. And encouraging your child to listen and really kind of focus on what's around them is being really mindful, isn't it? And kind of being aware of their surroundings and their world is fascinating.
I think that's really important as well. And I often, when I am out and about, I don't like to put headphones in because I do like to listen to kind of what's going on around me. And I think that would be really important for kind of children as well, as you say, to kind of be like connect with their environment and what's around them.
So interesting, isn't it? When I'm sat in traffic on my way to work, I'll look out of the window and I'll just see people kind of like this.
Yeah.
And I think, oh, what would you see if you looked up? Like you would see so much stuff. And it's so easy in our busy lives, isn't it? And sometimes our screens and our phones are a way of switching off, aren't they? And but you can also switch off by kind of looking up and putting those things down. But we've become kind of like reliant on them, haven't we? And it's trickier. It's easier said than done, but yeah, even if you just do it for a few moments, it can be really impactful.
Absolutely, really, really can be. And sorry, just one of my final questions. Do you feel the way you mentioned earlier, kind of about your childhood and growing up on a farm and always being in nature, do you feel that's really had an impact on kind of who you are today and the kind of things that you want to pass on to Effie?
Yeah, hugely. I think, I was always happiest outside as a toddler, as a child. We spent our holidays in Wales pony trekking. So 9 times out of 10, we were crawling around a forest with like my sister or my mum's friends or riding horses and just kind of being outside all the time with very little. When you're camping, you can't take a great deal of stuff, can you? And those experiences are something that I hold really deeply in my memories, and actually I really want to recreate for Effie and for her to have these like kind of experiences outside. And we have a fire on in the garden like afternoons that we're out there, even if it's just to warm our hands up when we're playing with ice or whatever.
Yeah.
And actually some people are like, 2-year-old fire. But Effie's been around fire since she was really little, and she respects and understands actually the safety and limitations of being around a fire. And they're really important life skills, aren't they? Like when you look at like the Montessori approach and using those practical life skills, she is really, really good with using a knife to chop up an apple to be able to put over the fire. And we make all sorts. We made popcorn yesterday on the fire. That was great fun. Again, music in nature. We're listening to the popping, the fire crackling, and taking those risks. And I think it's those life experiences that she can then use throughout her life and adulthood that she'll remember. We all have education in some way, shape or form, and most of it, do we remember a lot of those like kind of calculations that we were taught in maths and things? Have you used pi since you left school?
I can't say I have.
But as important as they are, actually those life skills and experiences kind of shape you as who you are as an adult. And I think it's something I was really, really passionate to recreate for Effie, and also the children I've had in my care as well. And going back to that kind of how influential the first few days and years of your child's life are, is you can do one small thing that doesn't seem like a big deal to you can really impact that child forever, and shape the way they become as an adult.
Absolutely. So have you got any kind of final takeaway tips from this discussion? Because honestly, I found it so interesting for parents that are really interested in this and kind of want to kind of start on this journey.
Yeah, I mean, obviously get yourself prepared. We've kind of spoken about that's really important. But I think the top tip is probably just enjoy it. Like embrace it, enjoy it, and just go for it. Just throw yourself headlong into it, however deep you feel you need to and want to and are able to. And don't set yourself any goals. There are loads of people kind of saying about this kind of like 1,000 hours outside and stuff, and that's really tough to achieve with a small child, because 1,000 hours is a lot of hours in one year. Yeah, and actually I had to do some maths on it, because it works out at like 2.5 hours a day.
A lot.
And some days that isn't going to be possible, manageable, or you might not want to. And it's okay to say, actually, you know what? I'm going to leave the gale force winds today and not go out. It is torrential rain. I probably will give it a miss, but also just embracing it and go, you know what, it's raining, let's go outside. And my most favorite memory of Effie is we were playing once inside, and it really started to chuck it down. It was kind of a late summer, you know, when we had that last kind of final heat wave.
Uh-huh.
And I said to her, oh, can you hear the rain? And she went, oh, it's raining. And she ran out, she whipped all of her clothes off and her shoes off, her socks off, and just stood in the rain like,
Oh.
oh, I was just like, this is amazing. Just stood there like almost in tears, like watching her.
Oh.
It's pure joy. You don't need anything to enjoy nature, and to enjoy the outdoors. And yeah, that's my top tip: is don't overcomplicate it. Get stuck in and just release your inner child if you can as
Oh.
well. Child will love you even more
Yeah.
for just being joyful with them.
Oh, thank you so much, Katie. I've had such a brilliant time. I've
Oh,
really enjoyed our chat. I've got so many. I need to go outside my little girl later. Really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it. And I will pop all of your Instagram details below, because honestly, people should go and have a look at your page. It's really, really good. You've got some really good content on there. Yeah, you're doing a brilliant job. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
It's been really good fun, and I love sharing about this. So it's been a real honour to come on and chat, and hopefully inspire one family to go outside and spend a little bit more time in nature.
Absolutely. I'm sure you've done that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Early Years Development Show. I found it so interesting, and thank you so much to Katie for being on the show. I hope you enjoyed, and please make sure you like, comment and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening, and we hope to see you again very soon. Bye!